I'm Dana, and I'm going to talk today about wildlife rescue. Most of you guys know what to do if your pet dog or your cat gets sick or injured. You call a vet. But what if you walked outdoors and you found a little baby squirrel curled up under a tree, or your cat catches a bird and injures it, or you're riding to school and you see an injured owl on the side of the road? Who are you going to call with injured or orphaned wildlife? If you called your vet probably is going to say, oh, we don't do wildlife, we just do pets. But you need to call a wildlife rehabilitator. That's what I do. I'm a wildlife rehabilitator. So today we're going to talk about what wildlife rehabilitators do. I'm going to show you around a wildlife rehab facility and some of the cool animals that we've got in right now. And most importantly, I'm going to train you guys on how to safely rescue wildlife if in the future someday you do come upon a little baby possum or a baby bird or an injured hawk or something like that that needs to be rescued. We'll talk about the proper ways to rescue that and get them into the hands of someone that's trained and licensed, like a wildlife rehabilitator. So a wildlife rehabilitator is somebody that actually is trained and licensed to care for either orphaned wildlife or injured wildlife. So without further ado, let's get started. And I'm going to show you around Gulf Coast Wildlife Rescue. This is our hospital. And when we get calls in with injured animals, people bring them to us usually, and they come in cardboard boxes or kennels. And well, let's go on in the hospital and take a look. This is where we triage and care for injured and orphaned wildlife. This is Cheryl, and she is a mammal specialist. And let's go on and look and see what we have in the hospital right now. When animals come in, the first thing we do typically is we examine them and and check them for injuries and so forth. And then we set them up in these smaller cages. This is an empty cage, but I'm going to show you something. And they go into these smaller cages until they're feeling better or off medications or have their wing wraps off or their leg wraps off. And they go out to larger cages, which we'll show you later. This is springtime, so we don't have a lot of animals right now. It's early spring. Later on, we're going to have lots and lots more. Right now, we have a little sick seagull, laughing gull. We're down here by the coast, so we get lots of pelicans and seagulls in. This little guy is recovering from being sick. And I think we saw the pelicans in here. One of them has a broken wing, and one of them has some neurological issues from probably impact. He's kind of falling over. But this is where they stay until they're feeling better, until they move to the larger caging. We'll show you. The next stage, once the animals are better and they're ready to leave the small enclosures of the hospital, we move them to larger caging. So I'm going to show you some of the larger facilities we have in here. We've got some injured, recovering laughing gulls. We're by the coast, so we get lots of laughing gulls. So these guys are all recovering from various and sundry wing injuries, and they're in a larger cage so that they can start flying and exercising and getting closer to release. Okay, so this is the barred owl enclosure. Actually, this is the most common bird I receive. I get close to 100 of these a year, usually car strikes or orphaned due to car strikes. These are, like I said, barred owls, not barn owls. They're called barred owls due to the striping. You can see the bars on their chest. They have brown eyes rather than the gold eyes of like the great horned owls. They're the ones that go, ooh, 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 wah, ooh, 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 wah, something like that. And we have a lot of these in this area, Gulf Coast. They love water. They like to hang around bayous, lakes, and ponds. Their favorite food, I always joke that they're Cajun because their favorite food is crawfish. 9 times out of 10, when I receive an injured barred owl, the first pellet that they spit up is always crawfish parts. And so these birds do spit up pellets, the hawks and the owls, we feed them mice, and so the fur and the bones are not digestible, so they end up spitting up what we call pellets, which is the fur and the bones. So these two guys had suffered from car strikes. They both can fly, but they have some vision issues. So we're in the process of evaluating them for release. We're going to put him back.
Oh.
Up here. Let's see if you saved your food. Yes, you did. Good. This is a young fledged barred owl, and most of the time we can put the fledged barred owls back up in a tree, and they don't need to be rescued. But this guy was very thin, and he has a little bit of a problem with one of his hocks, his knee, but I think he's going to outgrow it. But he was not faring well on his own, so we did rescue him. And so he's in here, though. He's got surrogate parents, so that's why him clicking his beak like that means he doesn't like me at all, which is good. Because if I came in here and he was baby crying to me, that would mean he's imprinted, and we don't want him imprinted. So that's why first thing, as soon as he was stable, is he goes out here where he's got cut up mice and all, and they actually probably feed him at night. And he's getting around here with, and while, even though these really aren't his parents, they take care of him very well. And they'll even jump down there and sit with him. We'll leave him be. Hey, so we got in some baby armadillos. They're juveniles. They're winged, but they're too small to be on their own. Now, you have to really appreciate this. Flat newspaper was put in here, but very quickly they know how to shred up the newspaper and make them a big, nice bed. And all armadillos do this. I don't know what kind of this is learned from, but they thoroughly shred newspapers. I'll show you. Armadillos always have, well, I'll tell you in a second. Let me grab one out. You can find one. Oh, there's actually, they always have 4 identical babies.
Oh my God.
They always have quadruplets. I actually only have 3. They're still trying to capture the last one. But there was no mother, and they were wandering around unattended during the day. But they're doing very well now. They're eating like little piggies, and they're in the anteater family. But the mothers always have one egg splits into 4, and they have identical quadruplets. So these are obviously mammals, and but they're a prehistoric type of mammal. And they're in the anteater family.
Wow. That's awesome.
And we keep them until they're about football size. And you'll see he's got a number 1. I number them so I can keep up with their weights and their medications. Okay, so this is our outdoor pelican, seabird flight cage. Once they leave the hospital, they come out here, and we'll let you look at the birds we have in rehab right now. We've got a couple of adult pelicans. One of the pelicans came in with a fractured wing, probably did it diving for food. The other one came in with tangled up in monofilament, and probably going to throw up his fish. That's what they do when they get a little scared. That's okay. There we go.
Wow.
That's what birds do. And then we've got a bunch of laughing gulls that have come in over the last few weeks. Some of them came in with coccidial botulism, where they're just real sick and can't fly, and they actually get paralysis. And some of them with fractured wings, and they're all in various stages of rehab. So when some of these raptors and birds come in, they have wing injuries, and they have to be in tip-top condition before they can be released. So we have very large flight cages. I'm going to show you my largest flight cage. It's 64 feet, where the bird can actually exercise back and forth prior to release. Right now, you can follow me in here. We've got a great blue heron that came in, very close to release. Come on in here. The But this is the large flight cage, and she'll probably fly back and forth. The great blue heron there was actually found tangled down by the beach in monofilament or fishing line by her beak, and she was hanging on a power line for hours. And she was in really bad condition when we got her. It took her 4 or 5 days to even stand up and be able to hold her head up. But we've progressed from smaller caging to larger caging, and now she's really close to release. If we walk down here, I'll show you how she does. Here we've got a little pool set up for her, and she eats lots of mullet and thread herring. There she goes. She is a day or two away from being released now.
Wow.
Her main injury was just shock, and it's called capture myopathy. It's just severe shock, what the body does when animals are captured and contained like that. She just, all kinds of things happen that oftentimes are irreversible, but she did recover from it and is doing quite well. She's ready for more fish. What we have here is we're going to be going into is my educational red-tailed hawk. He's non-releasable. I have special permits from Fish and Wildlife and Texas Parks and Wildlife. He is not flighted, therefore he is not releasable, but we're keeping him as an educational animal. I've had him for years. I believe I've had him almost 8 years. He's glove trained. We're just going to go here and see him in this cage, his enclosure. This time of year he enjoys building a nest. He's a male, but the male is the one that builds a nest, so this is his enrichment program. He's very busy building a nest there. But he has jesses on his legs that we can hook up a little leash, and he is glove trained, and we take him on programs, and he's an ambassador for our wildlife rescue group. And he's an adult red tail. He's a male, and the way you can tell that he's a male is because he's smaller. The females are actually larger. And he is he's obviously 8 or 9 years old, but you know he's over 3 years old because he has the red tail. The younger birds have stripes on their tails. Hawk that came in yesterday, hit by a car. He's got some head trauma, had a bloody ear and a bad eye. I think his eye's going to recover. Just giving him a little water here. She ate her mouse this morning, but she's not quite ready to perch yet. It looks like she may be interested in drinking water. So I'll leave her alone here. She's recuperating. In here we have an injured bufflehead duck. It has a fractured coracoid, which is a bone from the wings. Probably really too happy. It's a beautiful, beautiful little duck. Bufflehead. Over here we have a barred owl that came in. His wing was tangled up in a barbed wire fence, and the person undid it, and so then it had a lot of lacerations which had to be sutured up, and so she's got sutures in her wing. Fortunately there's no fractures, just so she's on antibiotics, and we're tending to the wounds that were caused by the barbed wire. A lot of birds of prey, when they're flying over barbed wire, will catch their patagium, which is that leading edge of the wing, onto the barbed wire, and it will get tangled up, and we get a lot of great horned owls, and not as many barred owls, but a lot of great horned owls that get caught up in barbed wire fence. And if they get left there very long, it's not a good prognosis, but if we get them fairly rapidly, we have a pretty good prognosis. This guy, we're going to get ready, and I'll show you. We're going to take him out to an outdoor facility, because this is a turkey vulture that came in with a broken wing, and his wing is still droopy right now because we just unwrapped it, and so his wing will have a tendency to droop for a while. but he needs to be exercised, so he's got to go out into an outdoor flight and eventually go into a 100-foot flight where he can, he's got good wing extension and everything, but he's got to exercise up to where he can fly. And he was probably hit by a car. It stinks. That's why I want to get you outside. Oh yeah, yeah. Go ahead and throw up. Do it. Get it over with. So don't feel it on me. Yeah. Oh. The vultures throw up as a defense mechanism because the throw up smells so bad that most animals run away, except for rehabbers who don't. Okay, so the next stage, we've taken this vulture, we've unwrapped his wing, and now we're going to put him into a different enclosure outdoors so that he's not in the hospital anymore. And I'm going to give him a perch here in a minute and some water and food. Sit out here, he's got to recover. So what we have here is an adult whitetail hawk, and she's actually a repeat patient. She came in several months ago, hit by a car with fractured wingtip metacarpals and a fractured beak, and she's healed up nicely. She healed up nicely. However, fast forward several months later, she came in having been hit by a car about 7 miles from where we released her. But this time, I think the reason she had gotten hit by a car is she had suffered a bite wound to the chest. And where it was, and it was obviously a bite wound by a small, like a raccoon or something, a smaller mammal. They nest near the ground, and I believe that she was probably sitting on eggs or chicks, and a mammal attacked her. And so because of that injury, she was a little thin, and she probably flew low over the road and was hit by a car. Luckily, nothing was fractured. I think she was just dazed, but the gentleman brought her in, and I'm glad she did, because she really had an infected wound that needed to be tended to. So she's on a course of antibiotics, and we're tending to that wound under her wing. And as soon as she's flying again, well, then we'll cut her loose again. And you can see she's banded down there. She came back. That's how I knew who she was, by the band number that was on the band. All the raptors that we released, we band them, and so that way we can identify them later if they turn up somewhere else or back into wildlife rescue.
This is a little boy raccoon. He came in with his 3 brothers on Easter Sunday. The homeowner had heard babies crying for 2 days, and he waited to see if the mom came back, and there was no mom coming and going from the shed where the babies were, so he called our Gulf Coast Wildlife Rescue hotline, and I went over and picked them up. They were in good shape, but dehydrated, a little dehydrated from the mom not being there. And this is how we feed the babies. We order special raccoon formula. We typically feed them with a nipple and syringe. It gives us a little more control of how fast or slow they eat. They're very enthusiastic eaters, and sometimes will eat too fast and choke on it. They can aspirate it, get respiratory infection. So we just like to be in control of it. Also, using the syringe cuts down on how much air gets to the belly. Where we don't have to burp them. Sometimes we get a lot of babies, and any step we can take to make things easier on the feeding process, we do. We weigh our babies. It tells in grams. It tells us how much he can eat. We typically feed them 5% of their body weight. We weigh them every day. We make sure they're gaining weight. After they eat, we stimulate them to go to the restroom until they're old enough to do it on their own. And these guys are 3 to 4 weeks old. They opened their eyes about 2 days ago, and they still need some help going to the bathroom. There's a little purr for you. We generally kind of give them some attention because their mom does. And that's him purring. And after he eats, he pretty much goes back to sleep. And that's just we feed him about every 4 hours. I'll give him a 5 to 6 hour break at night. And that's how we feed raccoons. This is a baby possum. He's been with me for several weeks. So he's already tripled in size since I got him. When they're little, we tend to tube feed them because they don't suckle the way a kitten or a puppy would. When they're little, they swallow their mother's nipple down their throat, and they kind of live on them until they get to a certain size where they start hanging on our back, holding to the fur. So the easiest way to feed them is we take a feeding tube, and we have different size tubes based on the size of the animal. We have some that are as small as fishing line for the newborn possums. And we run this all the way down to his belly. And then we depress the plunger. This one should start lapping soon. He's starting to fight the tube, but when I've tried recently, he wouldn't do it. And these guys we stimulate to go to the bathroom as well. We'll cover it up so everybody don't have to see what comes out. But tend to put a pouch in here. It's kind of like having their mama's pouch. All in together. I don't know if you can hear that sound. They make a little ch-ch sound, and that's them calling out to each other. Or their mother if they have one. And then here's some bigger possums. These guys are eating on their own. We get shallow, like ceramic or heavy weighted dishes, and we put the possum formula in the dish, and they will lap it out. And we also give them dry cat kibble, what they like to chew. They can grip with their tail. They cannot hang upside down with their tails like cartoons, but they do use it like an extra limb and use it for balance and to grip things. They also use it to grab leaves and different things to take to their nest. They're sweaty inside. Here we have a baby eastern gray squirrel. She's been with me for a couple weeks. They like to eat laying on their belly, and they like to hold on. She gets older, you can kind of age her by if her tail fluffs up, and this one's about 4 weeks old. She ain't got too fluffy yet, she's still small. You can also tell by their teeth, but I don't think she's going to cooperate with showing us her teeth today. And these little guys are able to go to the bathroom on their own. Generally, by the time their eyes open up, they're a little bit more self-sufficient. We also feed these guys rodent block. It's high in calcium. It's good for their bones. Gives them, they need to chew on stuff even at a young age, otherwise their teeth get overgrown. Their whole life they have to chew, or their teeth will get overgrown and they can have health issues. So we try to give them sticks and rodent block and various hard things to chew on. There we go. And they don't want to give it back.
Hi, I'm Trina. I'm a volunteer with Gulf Coast Wildlife Rescue, and I raise and help mostly songbirds. I take in other kinds of animals too, but this time of year, especially in the spring and summertime, we get hundreds and hundreds of birds needing help, and most of these are babies this time of year. And as you can see, there's bins and bins of babies, and this is only some of them. These have all come in within the last week or two. It's very important that if you find a little baby bird, I'm going to talk to you about how to assess whether it needs help or not. Sometimes it looks like they need help, but they really don't. And why you don't want to keep a baby bird that you find, because it's not like having a cute little pet. One, they are a lot of work. Most of these guys require food every half an hour, and that's all day long. It doesn't matter if it's Saturday or you want to, sleep in. You just can't. So from sun up to sundown, these guys eat all day long. They poop all day long, so you're feeding and cleaning all day long. And if you feed this the wrong type of diet, things can go horribly wrong. Each species has their own special diet. I mean, there's a lot of insects. There's crickets, there's superworms, there's mealworms, there's fruit and special blend of pellets. And you have to have the right blend of calcium, vitamins. If you get all of this wrong, you need UV light, then they get horrible diseases like metabolic bone disease, and they just they pass away very easily, or they're crippled for life. So we don't want to do that. You want to get them to a registered wildlife rehabber to help these guys out. So we want to take a peek. Some of these guys eating. These guys are constantly hungry. These are barn swallows. Barn swallows are very plentiful this time of year, and they eat a lot of flying insects. You don't want to eat? Okay, everybody else wants to eat. And they like to build their nests right in doorways. They make little mud nests above, in wherever they can, a lot of times in barns. Some of these guys are new, and so they're a little bit more afraid. But if you see a nest, try not to bother them or take them down, because it is against the law to mess with bird nests, and they don't take very long to grow up, and so just wait for them to grow up, and then you can remove the nest after the end of the season, and they'll be on their way. These guys are almost ready for a flight cage. These guys go from being in the nest, and they once they hop out, they fly around. So in this bin over here, we've got some mockingbirds and a blue jay. The blue jay's by himself, so he's got mockingbird friends. They're all very cute.
Mm-hmm.
They eat a ton. You can do it. No. Have specialized guys like these doves over here. These are morning doves. They are not insect eaters. They are actually seed eaters, and they require a special formula. And this is not something that you can do at home. I do tube feed them because it is a little faster this way. But you just give them a little bit of formula here, and they have their food in their crop. And I have a lot of mourning doves, and it's when they get older, they go into fledgling cages so that they learn how to to get around and perch and eat on their own. I do keep a couple foster doves to help them eat and figure things out a little bit faster. When they are fledglings, they go from these bins to larger enclosures. For my wrens, I like these little clothes hampers because they're so small and compact. They just jump around here, and it's easier to have this in the house to teach them. You have to feed them constantly, and it's easier to have them close by because you're feeding them constantly. Carolina wrens and chickadees are the ones that have to eat very often. They're so small and their metabolism is so high. These guys, I just got them yesterday, so they're not very adventuresome right now, but they are hungry. And they eat a variety of different insects. Right now I just have crickets, but they learn how to eat crickets and mealworms first, and then I release bugs in their flight cage eventually, and they learn how to catch things on their own. Alright, that's it for now, guys. I have fresh clippings in here, like fresh branches. But there's a whole menagerie of insectivores. There's a bluebird, eastern bluebird, right there. There's a American goldfinch. There's wrens in here. There's a cedar waxwing up in the corner. I do very little interaction with these guys because when I raise them as babies, they are used to seeing me feed them, and I want them not to habituate with humans, and so they stay here for a few weeks to learn how to fly, learn how to eat, learn how to forage. I let insects go in here and they catch them, and I only come out here a couple times a day, and so they spend time with each other and not with people. So we want them to be afraid of people. These birds, there's a lot of birds here that require our help all the time, and usually it's because it's caused by people. So there's some things that you can do to help out these birds so that they can keep safer and not end up here. One is keep your cats indoors. Cats are the #1 killers of songbirds. Half of these guys are cat caught, and they have horrible bacteria in their mouths that will kill a bird if they don't come in and have antibiotics. So if you have an indoor cat, please keep it indoors. And if you have an outdoor cat, please keep it indoors. That's maybe hard for some, but anyway, that's the #1 thing for songbirds. Another thing is window strikes. If you have a window, large window that maybe faces a certain direction where it reflects the sky, you may be having a lot of birds crashing into those windows. So there are certain things that you can do to keep that from happening. They make special decals. It'd be worthwhile to look those up if that's a problem you're having. Another one is some of these guys get poisoned. If you have a garden or you're spraying for insects in and around your house or garden, try to keep things natural. If you are trying to control, say, aphids that are eating your roses or something, go get some ladybugs. It's a much more natural option. There's some pesticides that are much safer than others, and some that you don't want to use at all. They're killing the bees and the insects that are found on the ground. These birds, they're opportunistic. They're going to find these dead insects and eat them, and they're going to get sick, and some of them do die. So that's another thing that you can do to help out these birds. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about how you know when to help a baby bird that you found, and when not to help a baby bird. Say you're walking along and you look down on the sidewalk and you find a couple or one little baby bird. See how it's naked? There's hardly any feathers. See how he's naked? He's just starting to grow little feathers in. He's on the ground. He may be chirping. He may have a little bit more fluff like this guy. Oops, he's still a nestling because he does not have enough feathers to keep himself warm, even though he's got a fuzzy head. These are also nestlings. These are doves. They have a little bit more feathers, but you see how they're not completely covered with feathers? They're pretty naked still. And these guys are all too little to be out of the nest. They have either fallen out or a predator has yanked them out, or something scared them out of the nest and they fell out somehow. So they do need help. If you can find the nest, if you can put them back in, that is the best course of action. If you cannot, always call a wildlife rehabber and ask, what should I do? And most of the time, they're gonna ask, well, can you find the nest? Can you put it back in? And if not, then they will need help. The second scenario is you're gonna find this mostly feathered little baby bird, and you know it's a baby because it's still got a little short tail. See how it looks, kind of looks like a blue jay, but look at this teeny little tail. And he doesn't know how to fly yet, or maybe he flies a little bit. He does have wing feathers, but he just hops around on the ground. And these are mockingbirds here. Same thing, short little tail. They hop around quite well, and they might even flutter around in bushes, but they can't fly very well, and that's a dangerous time for them. These are called fledglings. They have left the nest because it's time for them to jump out and start being an adult bird, and so they're going to have a few days where they cannot fly. They need to hop around and seek shelter in bushes. Their parents are around and they feed them. So most of the time, if you see a fledgling like this, they have parents around and they do not need help. Now, sometimes if you're in a situation where it looks injured, or that you see flies or ants all over it, or you know it's been hurt by a dog or a cat, then yes, do call a wildlife rehabilitator. Catch it, put it in a small, like a shoebox with some bedding on the bottom. Keep it in a nice, quiet, warm place, and call someone, and we'll help you out and tell you what to do. Should you ever find barn swallows that are out of their nest and on the ground, barn swallows on the ground are in trouble. These guys are always in the air or in the nest. So if you see a barn swallow or any kind of swallow on the ground, they need help. So if there is no nest nearby to put them into, then call your wildlife rehabber.
Hey, so we've gotten in, a volunteer just delivered this. It's an injured great horned owl that was running around in a woman's backyard, and they captured it. It probably, most likely, was hit by a car and has suffered a fractured wing. So we're about to examine it and see what's going on with its wings. So we have to be very careful and make sure we don't get injured by the owl. To stay away from his talons and his beak. It can be quite formidable. Let's see, this is actually a small male. The females are a little bit bigger. We'll go around the corner here where we're going to examine it. See what's happening here. So his left wing is the one that's injured. Okay, so he's got actually an old healing radius ulna fracture, which is a good deal. So this is a very doable fracture. In fact, it's so much healed that I'm probably not even going to do a wing wrap on him. He's not even that skinny, which is interesting. So he's been he was either very fat when he was injured, or he's been successful hunting on the ground, which they can be. I'm going to look, and I said it was he actually has an injured eye as well. You may have noticed that before I did. Right there, one of his eyes. That's probably from it could have been an old injury that he suffered, or it could be from this time. But by the looks of it, that might be an older injury, but that probably is why he got hit by a car. Actually, there is some blood going on here. Look at this wing a little bit more carefully. Oh no, yeah, we need to actually, he needs to be sutured up a little bit. It's kind of surprised. That's an old fracture. I'm not sure why it's all bloodied up. Unless that happened during the recapture. Oh, she said there was blood on the wall, when she saw him. I wonder if something else happened to him. Some dust. Termites. We dust all our birds, so he's gonna have to be sutured up at some point, and I will do that later. Just clean the wound with some chlorhexidine. Sprinkle him for external mites. This gets rid of any feather mites that he might have. I see mites running around on his feet. There. He does have mites. Your bad make sure your elbow's intact. Yeah. Now I'm second guessing myself. I don't think that's an old fracture. I think that's a freshly. I hope it wasn't electrocution.
Oh.
Because it feels like there's a bump there. I thought that was a fracture. It's not. That's a fresh. That may just be road rash. You may have just gotten hit right there. So let you rest for a little bit. Let's get a weight on you real quick. This is the way we tear the towel. Now 0. The bird. Explains why he's not skinny. Okay. It's a windy day, and a gentleman called and said he found a baby hawk on the ground while he was mowing. And what we're getting in now are the red-shouldered hawk nestlings. Unfortunately, storms and winds are blowing them out of their nests. So we have this little guy here. He just came in. Luckily, he was landed in grass, and I think some branches broke his fall. So I think he's not suffering from any mortal injuries. I think he's going to make it. He'll be going to a raptor center where they have, in fact, I just sent them a couple other tiny nestling red shoulders, so he can be raised together with other red shoulders. So what we're going to do is just do a quick little exam and to make sure he doesn't have any fractures. We dust him with a little bit of dust, 7 dust. This is to kill any external parasites. And we'll look at him, and he looks, you know what, he may have a broken leg. Feel his little leg here. Yes, he does. He has a broken leg. So, yeah, his little left leg is broken. But these guys are grow so fast and all. It can heal in literally 2 or 3 days, but it needs to be set properly. So, We'll do that in just a little bit. And we'll examine his little head and look in his little mouth. And he actually has fly eggs right there inside his mouth that we need to get rid of, because those can actually turn into maggots. So we're gonna have to clean him up and get those out, and then feed him. Oh, he's got fly eggs all over him. See that right there? That's all the. All out.
Do those hurt him now, or only
No,
when they...
no, they just will turn into, dust will kill them as well. But they'll turn into maggots.
Mm-hmm.
Little fly eggs look like little yellow rice, and in just hours they turn into maggots, and then they will actually eat into good flesh. Nasty little flies. You know, it's amazing that when the birds are up in the nests, they don't bother them. They know when they're on the ground. You know, it's part of it's height, part of it's just they know they're vulnerable, and they're laying there still, and the mother's not keeping them off, the flies off. And
Yeah. He's too young to preen himself,
yeah,
probably.
he won't. Yeah, and injured birds also get fly eggs. They'll just be sitting there, and they'll get fly eggs on them as well. Any injured or babies on the ground. Let's see. Stabilizing it against the intact metatarsus. It's a fractured tibula fibula, and just kind of stabilizing it there so it's kept stable just there, and it'll heal very rapidly. I'm going to get a weight on this little guy. Let's weigh him on my other scale. It's a little bitty. It's 118 grams. Let him rest for a little bit before. A little bit of cut up meat. There you go. here is the baby owl fell out of this nest in a tree over here. And we're not going to be able to get him back in his actual nest, but we're going to make a functional nest for him so that he can get back up in the tree and back to his mom and dad. So let me grab the owl. Owl in here.
Yeah, it's over to the right.
So we're not getting it back in the original nest. We're making him a fake nest. His original nest is way up there. And great horns typically don't make their own nests. They kind of steal nests. So they'll use like old squirrel nests or an old red-tailed hawk nest. But they don't really fabricate their own nests. They just kind of come in and steal a nest.
Oh, wow, he's not warm. Chicken out there. He is not happy.
But this could be a female. I was telling it but you see how the feathers are not all out yet. So this bird can't fly yet. He still needs another week or so in the nest. And he still, when he leaves the nest, he won't fly. He's be hopping around for a little bit. But the parents know what to do. They usually take him out to the woods and all. He'll stay with his parents for like 6 months. Even after he's flying, they're like teenagers. They just hang around and never leave. But anyhow, so we're going to get him back up there, and his parents. And it doesn't matter that I've touched him. That's a myth about touching birds and the parents rejecting him. His clicking is a beak. You saw he was doing that. Yeah. That's I hate you, I hope you die. In owl language, yes. And he's quite formidable with these people. I guess Frank here, the homeowner, was saying, "Oh, I'm afraid cats are going to get him. Cats won't mess with these guys."
No.
Yeah, no. If he can't take care of himself, I guarantee his parents are watching and they will. So I'm just going to put him. It's a great horned owl. So I'm just going to leave him here for now.
Good? The ladder? Okay. You know what?
He's up there, scared to death right now.
Oh,
We'll calm down in a minute. This is what he's used to. He's spent every day of his life so far up in the tree in the breeze like this. So he's going to be very comfortable here in a second once we get out of this.
good.
So, one of the questions I often get is, what do I do if I find injured or an orphaned wildlife? What am I supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? The first thing to do is to decide if it needs to be rescued. Oftentimes, some of the things like baby birds that are hopping around, they may be fledglings, which are being fed by their parents and hopping around. They're not flying yet, but that's exactly what they're supposed to do. So you need to determine if the bird is injured. If the bird or mammal is injured, it definitely needs to be rescued. If a cat brings it in or a dog brings it in, it needs to be rescued. If you find a baby squirrel, a baby possum, a baby mammal, 9 times out of 10, they need to be rescued. Now, that's completely different if you cut them out of a tree or find them in your attic. That's maybe, that means they were in their nest and doing well. Or if you find a baby bunny nest and uncover it, that's a whole different scenario. And you need to talk to a wildlife rehabilitator if those things happen. However, though, if you just randomly find a baby mammal on the ground, they almost always need to be rescued, except baby deer. If you find a baby deer bedded down somewhere and it's just sitting there and it looks perfectly healthy and it's not walking around crying, there are no flies on it, it needs to be left alone. So, what do you do when you do need to rescue something? Sometimes you find an injured adult bird or a baby mammal laying on the ground and you know it needs to be rescued. So what we've got down here, we've got our little baby bird here, and you can, first of all, get something just like a shoebox. Any kind of shoebox, cardboard boxes are great. You put some paper towels or just soft bedding in there, a soft clean towel, and a shoebox is great for rescuing. And a little baby bird, you can use a little cup towel. I've got a bigger towel here, and just gently pick it up with a towel. And you can put the little bird into the box and you cover it up. Now, important things to know now is do not try to feed it. Don't put water in its mouth. You don't do anything. The only thing you can do is keep it somewhere safe and warm and away from pets and children. And the first thing you do after that is to call a wildlife rehabilitator. So the way you would do that, you could Google wildlife rescue near me. You can call a local veterinarian and ask them who the local wildlife rescue group is. You can call your library and ask them. But a real easy way typically is just Googling wildlife rescue near me. I'm with Gulf Coast Wildlife Rescue. We rescue animals down here in the southern Brazoria County, Matagorda County area. If you're interested in volunteering or if you're interested in donating towards our organization, you can either call us on our hotline, which will come up after this in a little bit, or you can contact us on our website, or you can look us up on Facebook. We're Gulf Coast Wildlife Rescue, and we really appreciate you listening to this video and caring about our wildlife. And just remember, if you find injured or orphaned wildlife, remember to call a wildlife rehabilitator. We really appreciate it. Thanks.